Ciao, and welcome to the Grapefully Yours Wine Show, coming to you from our InsideLowell studios in downtown Lowell. It's been a great run of weather, Mike.
Oh.
You know, this is my co-host, Mike Pigeon. The Pidge, he's doing a great job. You know, the wine butler.
Enjoying those colors. Isn't it beautiful in New England?
Yeah. Now, do you like my uniform?
The Celtics.
The Celtics are going to raise the banner tonight. I got my Celtics T-shirt, my Celtics hat on, the 18th banner. They're playing the Knicks, opening the new season, defense of the title. So we'll get into, you know, we're glad. So I had to wear this
Number
this
one
shirt,
fan.
you know. So we'll do that. And we got our producer, Teddy Panos, in the house. Teddy, say hello.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. We have a special guest today. One of my mentors, so when I first started with my wine studies and everything, Ciro Pirone. He was a long-time wine educator, an Italian wine ambassador for Horizon Wines, big distributor in Massachusetts, and he was there for 17 years. I mean, he gave seminars, and I met him through Joanne Ross, who was my teacher down at the Wine Scholar Guild. He has certification in Italian wines. He was much more expert than me. I mean, he grew up in Italy, came to the United States in 2000, got a nice family, doing very well, always well-respected, knowledgeable, and accessible. One thing I always liked about Sarah, even he took all my stupid questions, you know. Well, there's never a stupid question, but very patient with me when I was first learning. And you see him all around. He'll talk to anybody, give you advice, and he's a great guy. So he's with Global Wines now. Okay, he's the vice president of business development, and I think he also owns a little stake in the company. You know, so he's doing well. He's building that portfolio that not only have Italian wines, they got wines from all over the world, French and Argentina. And I was looking at their portfolio, beautiful, and they're based right up in Beverly Farms. Nice, nice website and everything. And I think they're going to do well with Ciro's expertise and his contacts. I mean, he knows a lot of people throughout New England, the world. He travels, so he's a great guy. But first, before we get to Ciro, I got to make this little announcement, Mike. This InsideLowell podcast is coming to you from WellPoint Studios. WellPoint, the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. We got to get WellPoint to sponsor a wine, I think. You know, but we'd be fine. So you ready for Ciro?
We're set to go. Yes.
All right, Ciro, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Jim. I'm doing great. And well, thank you for the lovely introduction, and pleasure to be here with you guys and discuss everything Italian wines. And yes, as of this year, I joined with PSP Global Wines in the hope of obviously growing our portfolio, getting more people on board, and get everybody excited about Italian wines and beyond.
Tell us just a little about Global before we get into these wines. I mean, they have a beautiful, they look like a nice website. I was looking at their wines. They got some nice wines on there and stuff. And where do they distribute?
So basically, the company is called the PSP Global Wines. The reason being, Nicola Savignano, which is the main owner, he started the company PSP as a company in about 12 years ago. And then roughly 2 years ago, he acquired Global Wines, which was a separate entity and distributor with a different, independent portfolio. And now the two things are merged. And the portfolio that we have, it's predominantly Italian, I would say 65% to 70% maybe overall. But we do have wines from France that cover the main regions, obviously Champagne, Burgundy, Bordeaux, Loire Valley, and whatnot. We have a decent-sized portfolio also of Spanish wines.
Yep.
And with that, we do have some wines from Chile, Argentina, a little bit of South Africa, and some domestic wines from the United States. as well as a tiny portfolio of like Italian liqueurs, like a gin from Italy or vermouth, Amaro, but that's very tiny right now. The goal, obviously, in the next few years is going to be to grow the portfolio, improve the portfolio where we might be lacking, as the market for wines in general, but definitely Italian wines, which is what I live and breathe every day. It's very fluid. There's a lot of demand. I was looking for something different, new, a new appellation, new varietal, new style, and so you always have to be on the hunt for something that delivers in the market.
Yeah, and that seems to be your niche. You've got a lot of good contacts in Italy, and you're always on the lookout. And we might want to, we want to hear your trends for the new year or the fall. Anything interesting and new that you have coming up that you might suggest to our viewers. And these wines that you've Ciro and PSP Global were nice enough to give us a couple of wines to try and to show. Did you have any of these at your wine tasting this past weekend in Andover? Ciro was at Liquor Junction in Andover. He gave a little seminar and wine tasting.
Yeah, we did have the 𝐖𝐢𝐧𝐞 Rosso di Montalcino, as well as the le Cupole, but not we didn't have that Prosecco specifically. We had just I want to say a bit more generic Prosecco DOC rather than the single, the Conegliano Valdobbiadene. Yeah. But yeah, these wines have been, specifically these we're talking about, have been doing quite well. The family-run wineries with great history. And the quality, it's all in the bottle, where people easily connect to what the wines deliver, and the price point specifically.
Good. Okay, so let's get into this the Prosecco, because this is the top of the line region. Like Piero just said, there's a DOC and then a DOCG, which is the top of the tier. It's from the region where this is specifically from. This is a 100% Glera, right? Glera grape is used in this. Why don't you tell us a little about the producer and also this bottle? This is Colabrigo, right? Colabrigo, is that it?
Yeah, it's called Tenuta di Colabrigo.
Yeah.
It's it's a family-run property that they're based in. They started with basically their vineyards in Valdobbiadene. So when you look at the Prosecco area today, it's fairly large, because to make a Prosecco DOC, you can have vineyards pretty much within 90% of all of Veneto, plus entirely the region of Friuli. So it's a vast area, bigger than it used to be. But at the heart of it all, within the province of Treviso, there is very beautiful, town, kind of similar to Venice to a certain degree, but it's inland, lots of canals and obviously bridges and waterways. Within that area, we find the villages of Conegliano Valdobbiadene. So this area is very tiny. It's composed overall of 15 villages, the two main ones being these two specifically, where is the heart of the Prosecco production area, in a sense that here we find not only unique soils that are not found elsewhere, or at least not in this capacity, but also we find the steepest hillsides, which is critical for making quality wines, not only for exposure to the sun, but also because of drainage. And understandably, where you have a good drainage in the soil, you're going to have a bit more stressed vines that are going to give you more important wines with more fruit character, more intensity of aromas, because ultimately, Glera, which is the grape behind Prosecco, it's a fairly neutral variety. It doesn't have big aromatic profile, but when you plant it in the right place with a lot of sun exposure, you're obviously going to gain a lot more of that. And Prosecco, you could potentially blend 15% of other grape varietals, right, which it is commonplace today because it's just such a big demand. But in the case of Conegliano Valdobbiadene, for the most part, producers tend to stick with the 100% Glera, and the wines, when you take a look at the wine, as far as the color, tends to be slightly, I don't want to say darker in the sense of like a dark wine, but definitely a bit more yellow tone compared to a beige Prosecco, just because the amount of sunlight that you get in the specific area. And obviously the bubbles are fine. There's a great finesse. Very, very beautiful wines.
So, Ciro, I saw on the label it says Prosecco Superiore. Now, I always thought Superiore meant a higher alcohol level, but this has only got 11% alcohol. Is that consistent with the labeling?
Yes, because basically you're correct. Superiore implies that the wine has up to 1 degree extra of alcohol, which obviously comes from the fact that they're south-facing vineyards. More sun means more sugar in the grapes, and ultimately higher alcohol than normal. But in some of these areas, you sometimes, first of all, you cannot reach the alcohol levels because of the conditions. But number two is also the fact that this is a brut style, correct me if I'm wrong, and obviously in Prosecco, you're retaining some of the sugars, right?
Right.
Because brut implies you have about 12, 13 grams of residual sugar, so obviously the alcohol is less than a typical wine because you're not fermenting all the sugars. It could be 10% if it wasn't fully fully fermented.
Yeah. So, but the brut also implies that it's dry, right? It's dry.
Brut is practically, yes. Brut is practically, as far as Prosecco is concerned, is the driest version.
Yeah.
Because after that, unlike Champagne, where you can also have a Brut Nature or a Brut Zero, which is really 0 grams of residual sugar left in the wine, in the case of Prosecco, it's pretty much never the case, in the sense that you have brut in that window, and then there's extra dry, which actually has a little bit more residual sugar, and then dry, which is even more residual sugar. Because Prosecco, ultimately, it doesn't want to be a wine as austere as Champagne, as dry as Champagne. It wants to have a wine that has some residual sugar, but is balanced with the acidity of Prosecco and leaves on the palate the beautiful fruity notes that you expect from a nice Prosecco.
Yes. And I mean, this is great for anytime summer drinking, party drinking, but especially with the holidays coming up, I always have Prosecco, as an aperitif for welcoming wine. And it's great to, it's just great to have around and stuff.
It doesn't have to be a special occasion, just a great aperitif.
Just
Very
a refreshing
good.
wine.
Yep.
A day after work, even though I barely work anymore. So I tell my wife I worked all day.
Prosecco.
I come home. That's right. Have a little glass of Prosecco and stuff. And it's face. And you know what? Prosecco has become so popular worldwide. They started, it was about 4 or 5 years ago now. The rosé, is it the rosé Prosecco, which they can make it with Pinot Noir grapes now, right? The glitter Pinot Noir. Yeah, and that's basically.
The thing is, you guys obviously mentioned Prosecco. That's been the key to success of Prosecco globally, and obviously very importantly here in the United States, is the fact that it's a celebratory wine, but really celebratory of every moment, a gathering moment. It doesn't have to be a celebration of weddings, anniversaries, special moments, like in the case of Champagne, due to price point, but also taste profile. Prosecco, instead, you feel like some bubbly wine, you can have it anytime because the price point allows it, and it's definitely more palatable just because of the flavor profile to many people. Yes, and a few years ago, they realized there was a commercial opportunity, the producers and the consortium at large, because obviously producers were already making a sparkling wine by blending glera with other red grape varietals, but they could never legally call it Prosecco because, as far as the law is concerned, there was no red grapes permitted in the production of Prosecco. Eventually, they were able to get that changed and passed. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's had the success that they expected, because one big difference, other than obviously rosé definitely being more seasonal in general, doesn't matter if it's Prosecco, some other sparkling, still wines, but it's also the fact that Prosecco rosé has to be exclusively vintage dated, versus regular Prosecco, as you know, for the most part, is non-vintage. And that's a bit of a challenge because sometimes you can see still some Prosecco rosé that linger on the shelves and they can be a couple of years old. And with that, you lose the freshness, and that's not what you want from a good Prosecco when you have a glass.
Yeah. So where could consumers buy this wine, particular wine, and how much would they be paying for it?
So that wine happened, and I'm just going to give some general point because obviously I don't know specifically what stores or what areas we're talking about, but up in the northern part of Boston, I would say, obviously Liquor Junction in the various locations, they carry Colalbrigo, but also a new tiny fine wine shop that opened up in Andover called Andover Wine Merchant. They just opened about a week, 10 days ago, literally, so brand new. And then obviously the other thing that I'm specifically trying to do here at PSP Global Wines is develop the restaurant business, which is key to a lot of success, especially from Prosecco, Conegliano Valdobbiadene, but many of the other wines we carry. And as far as price point, this is actually would be a Prosecco that on the shelves would be like around $18.99.
Wow, that's a steal for DOCG1.
Yeah, I always told people, last night I was doing a seminar at UNH in New Hampshire, and I always tell people sometimes Prosecco, it's one of those instances where you don't need to spend a lot of money to get a lot better quality product.
Yeah.
You need to find it. You need to shop where, obviously they will have Conegliano Valdobbiadene as an option other than just the generic Proseccos. But the jump is only usually a couple of dollars, maybe $3-4. Is not going to be like it goes from 12 to 30 type of thing,
No, but it makes a difference to have a distinctive Prosecco. I always and this would be something that you could really talk about. I think the guests would really like this. I mean, I see a lot of Proseccos, offered during the summer, 2 for $20. It's like drinking water sometimes, and I want something that has a taste, that fruity, that nice fruitiness, the glow, that golden glow in the glass, So.
But think about this. I mean, these areas, because they're so high elevation and steep, there's no mechanization, so everything has to be hand harvested, which obviously is not only a cost, but it's a lot more labor when it comes. And that's why traditionally these kind of Proseccos, and especially Cartizze, which is the Grand Cru of Prosecco, were the last sites to be harvested, just because they were harvesting first the lower elevation area was easier, and then eventually they would move up here on the steep hills. And what would happen is because of that, because the longer hang time, the fruit would be riper. The wines with the grapes would have more sugar, and ultimately these type of wines would always be produced in the more like a dry style, which means practically they would have more residual sugar left in the bottle. And it wasn't because they wanted to sell a wine with more sugar, but just was because the level of sugar was contained in the grapes at harvest time. And that was historically the way of making these great Proseccos from this area. Today, where obviously things are speedier, even if it's still non-mechanized but hand-harvested, they're able to do the harvest quicker, also because they know that this is prime fruit from a prime site. And because of that, also understanding that people sometimes want wines with less sugar, and it's a volume product as well, they are able to make it in brut style, which is nice because it's drinkable at any time.
Beautiful. All right, there you have it. $18.99, a great Prosecco, and look for it on the shelves, and hopefully we'll see it in some restaurants. We're going to turn to our reds now, and this is I want to talk about the Rosso di Montalcino, the Innocente, and the 2019, my baby Brunello, right? Maybe you could explain what that is when they call the Rosso di Montalcino baby Brunello.
Yeah, so in Italy, as you well know, we have our own appellation system, with the various DOC, DOCGs. And Montalcino, it's a prime historical territory for great wines, where the famous Brunello di Montalcino, so beloved here in the United States, comes from. These are wines that are exclusively made with Sangiovese grapes, local biotypes, obviously. And understandably, you cannot just make one wine that is Brunello. The reason why you're not going to have every vintage the greatest quality of fruit, not every single vineyard within Montalcino. Figure Montalcino is 24,000 hectares in total, and 2,000 are under vine, so about 10%. And of that, you can just make Brunello, although you wish, because obviously you can charge more money, but still, Brunello is something that you have to age 5 years before you can release it. So it's actually the longest aged Italian wine by law, as far as requirement. So producers realized that this was way back then, that you needed to have a second wine. We call it fallback appellation. So practically these are vineyards that in cases could be not prime exposure, in cases could be vines that are younger, or it could be basically fruit that doesn't make the cut, although might be a quality site, but doesn't make the cut to be the top of the line production Brunello. And no matter what, every winery needs the wine that you can release every year, because for Rosso di Montalcino, it's only 10 months of aging required before being released versus the 5 years of Brunello. So the idea is to make still a wine that it's the traditional Montalcino, still a wine that has the character of Sangiovese, grown on this beautiful sunny hill located south of Siena, but without the great complexity of a Brunello, but also without the price point of Brunello, which means an opportunity for people to taste, the baby Brunello, as you mentioned, without having to pay the hefty price of Brunello, which is a special wine, but it costs a lot more. Put it that way.
So this is the 2019, because this wine Sangiovese ages well, and it seems like, I just had a little taste, but the fragrance, it's really aging well. It's coming into its peak form, it seems, right now. This
is an interesting situation.
Fragrance.
Because, typically Rosso di Montalcino, we are in 2024. The current vintage commercially would be 2022, right? Versus the Brunello, actually, the current vintage is 2019, as I mentioned, because the 5 years. We happen to have the Rosso di Montalcino 2019, which understandably is not the current vintage. But the great thing about it is that, first of all, as you mentioned, a great Rosso, just like a quality Brunello can age, and especially 2019 was a phenomenal vintage.
Yeah.
They've been blessed with several of those vintages, but still, 2019 was a great vintage, where sometimes you buy a Rosso from such a vintage, it's a great value, because you pay a third of the price of a Brunello when the wines are still available, and you're getting the character, you're getting the evolution in the wine. Unlike if it was 2022, obviously it would be a much fresher, more like red berry fruit wine, versus there you start tasting more, or smelling as well, the spices, the earthier character, the dried out floral notes, which is what Sangiovese delivers in such a special place like Montalcino.
What do you think, Mike?
You know what I like about it? The aftertaste. It invites you to have another sip. It's very comfortable on the back of your palate. You can taste the alcohol a little bit, but it's not overpowering. It's very, it's inviting.
It's got a nice harmonious acidity level. It's a great food wine.
It's got a little brown,
probably great food wine.
Little brown color to it, almost like the Amarone,
well,
but a lot like
means brown. But yes, it's got that reddish brown look. It's not bricking, but it reminds me of some of the buildings in downtown Lowell. That nice color.
Very
especially especially when they clean them. So it's beautiful. But it's got a clean. It's very clean. Ciro, get a nice clean taste, but the fragrance, that nice. You've got that outdoorsy, that cherry bramble or something. It's very, very nice.
Yeah, cherry. As far as Sangiovese is concerned, on a young, obviously Sangiovese, cherry is always the prime fruit aroma, as well as the violet, as floral notes. But as the wine evolves, you not only you get a little bit more the kind of a garnet coloration to the wine, but also you start getting this, forest floor, like they call Mediterranean shrub, where you get all this dry herbs that give this kind of a savory note to the wine itself. And also on the palate, as he was mentioning, you get this, high acidity, obviously drying tannins. That's why they call it always like the dusty, cherry quality of Sangiovese. That is quintessentially fantastic with the food. If you have some nice hearty pasta dishes, but also in Tuscany, lots of ribollita, the legume and vegetable type of soup. They're very hearty, very rich. Or just some nice mature cheeses, for sure.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Why don't you learn to make a nice ribolla soup? Maybe for the winter we could have this with,
You should. It's a lovely soup.
Yeah. Now,
very
what's the price point on this? The Rosso?
That Brunello, sorry, that Rosso di Montalcino you would find in a retail store around $25.99, something like that.
Yeah.
I was having this conversation the other day. It was a Twitter conversation actually with the fellow wine folks that from all over the place. As somebody posted a picture of Rosso di Montalcino, and I feel like the wines from Montalcino, especially Rosso, they should be wines not above the $30 mark, in my opinion, in the sense that they can definitely over deliver that price point when they start going up and up and up, just because the moniker Montalcino,
Right.
it's when they start losing value, because, understandably, not every Rosso di Montalcino is meant to be the Brunello. It's meant to be something you're buying to age, or as that extra that you're paying for, although you're drinking the wine today rather than 10 years from now. But fortunately for us, obviously, we are also an importer as well as distributor. And only that, the family behind these wines called 𝐖𝐢𝐧𝐞, they are a very artisanal family. They own basically 7 hectares of vineyard and 4 of olive groves, which they bought in the 60s. And they try to put out a quality product working very artisanally and very, I say old school, but basically very traditionally.
Yeah. No, I looked at their website and the property, beautiful property, and and they got a nice elevation. It's like about I think it was like 900 feet above sea level, which is a great for growing Sangiovese. They get that exposure and stuff. So it was a beautiful property.
Yeah, they are in actually an area of Montalcino. They're in the northernmost part, because Montalcino is like a square. And there is the village of Montalcino, kind of in the northern section. And north of that, right where pretty much the Montalcino territory ends, there's an area regarded as a subzone called Torrenieri, where some of the most age-worthy and important Brunellos come from. And their wines tend to be quite vertical, in the sense that have a very crunchy acidity, a very firm texture, and they, like I said, they can age very, very well. And yeah, their vineyards, go between 900 and about 1,100 feet of elevation. Obviously, there's a mix of different elevations, but they're very, very good producer for sure.
Yeah, no, it's got a nice, like you mentioned, the texture. It's good. It's got you can taste the tannic quality, but it's not overbearing. It's there. It's giving you that nice feel, mouth feel, and you know you're drinking a nice substantive wine. There's a lot of character in this glass. So,
and understandably, when you have it with food, it will give you a very different experience. These wines, they do require food, and with that, it will totally change what you're getting right now as a by itself.
Yeah. Very, very good. So you want a little water?
That's
here,
a good
Mike?
wine. That's a good
very
wine.
good wine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
For $26. Yeah, very good. Is that in the New Hampshire liquor stores? Would that be in the outlets in New Hampshire?
I honestly, I don't know specifically, because New Hampshire, as you know, has some of the 𝐖𝐢𝐧𝐞 wines. I know the Brunello is, the Rosso might be as well, but some wines are in stores. Some wines are only in the warehouse. So as you know, New Hampshire, it's a bit of a different market where, but the Rosso, Brunello, and I believe the Lume, which is a young Sangiovese 100% stainless steel, that's also listed in New Hampshire. Yeah.
Okay. Would the Liquor Junction be carrying this? The Rosso di Montalcino?
They do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So now we get to le cupole. Le cupole. Now, does that mean the domes? Is that what the roofs, the domes, le cupole?
Correct. Cupola, it's basically the rounded dome shape of a building, like many churches or buildings in Tuscany. Yeah.
Now, this is a very distinctive wine. When I looked this up, I mean, Andrea Franchetti he's the winemaker, producer, the owner. I mean, he is a pioneer. He's fearless. He's gone where no other vintner would go. He identifies rare pieces of unique property where the terroir would be good for growing grapes, but there's always a challenge. There's always a challenge, whether it's high in the hills, the mountains, on the sides of Mount Etna. And so why don't you tell us a little about this wine and Signor Franchetti, who's quite a guy. I've never met him, but I understand he's quite a guy.
Yeah, he unfortunately passed away. I believe it was 2 years ago, Andrea, but his son continues, obviously, the legacy of Andrea Franchetti, somebody that believed in, like you mentioned, searching for this very special, unrecognized piece of land, if you will, and realized the potential of making great wines, starting in the Val d'Orcia in Tuscany, which is where Tenuta di Trinoro is located. And Le Cupole that you have there has always been their flagship wine, as far as the wine that represents a high quality, great drinkability, and an affordable price point, if you will. Unlike obviously the other wines that he makes, because he also now all their production is based on international varietals.
Yes, yes.
So practically Le Cupole, it's a blend, like a Bordeaux blend, but he also has 4 other wines, five other wines, 3 of which are single vineyard Cabernet Franc, where the production is a max, typically depending on the vintages, between 850 and 1,100 bottles of each. Then there's an IGT 100% Merlot called Palazzi. And then lastly is a top of the line wine called Trinoro Rosso Toscana IGT, which is a blend of Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon that gets incredible ratings. But Le Cupole wants to be that wine that it's elegant, it's modern, is representative obviously of the varietals that go into the blend. So Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc. So it's plush, it's juicy. A lot of beautiful silky mouthfeel to the wine. Very different, obviously, when you taste 2 Tuscan wines like the ones you have there today, Rosso di Montalcino, where it's the more austere, savory, dry, Sangiovese-based wine, versus here we have, although the area is not far from Montalcino, because practically the Val d'Orcia is an area that kind of between Montepulciano and Montalcino, if you will. But it's although high elevation, it's protected by the Amiata Mountain, which is an extinct volcano in kind of like southeastern Tuscany. So he's able to gain these very warm conditions that allow for perfect ripening, especially for grapes like Cabernet Merlot and Cab Franc that they need obviously warm ripening season. And as you mentioned, yes, Andrea Franchetti, he was a visionary. So he, as Etna was a rebirth, there was a rebirth, if you will, renaissance of Etna. He was one of the first to go up there and set his own outpost. Started a winery called Passo Pisciaro. Yeah, Passo Pisciaro. Passo Pisciaro is actually the name of one of the contrade of the northern part of Etna. And he went to scout for this like very, very old vines, pre-phylloxera, vines, very high elevation, sometimes reach well above 1,000 meters, over 3,000 feet. And he planted not only the classic grapes of the area, such as Nerello Mascalese, Nerello Cappuccio, but he also, in the highest vineyards where you can ripen the red grapes, he decided to work with the Chardonnay. And he makes a beautiful wine called Passo Bianco, 100% Chardonnay, as well as a Contrada. And lastly, he makes a unique wine named after, himself, as far as the family name, called Franchetti. There is a unique blend of Petit Verdot and Cesanese da File, which is actually a Lazio variety, because he's always trying to push the envelope. He was trying to push the envelope in making wines that were expressive of the terroir, also by planting varietals that maybe people don't think belong on Etna, like in the case of the Cesanese and Petit Verdot, but still making wines of great balance, great elegance, and very, very beautiful.
Well, this is a distinctive wine because he's made basically the Bordeaux varietals, and this is dominated by Merlot. right? So
Yep.
so most people, you have some great indigenous grapes in Italy, but here he is, just like when Sassicaia was born. They believe that, hey, we can grow international varieties just as well in Italy. We have the terroir, and this is a statement to really that he, the vineyard continues to grow those nice varietals and do it well. And the Merlot Cabernet Franc, which has become trendy the last couple of years, even in France, they're producing more of it. They're even doing it in California now. In Washington State, they're growing Cabernet Franc as 100% varietal. So this has a really nice feel to it, nice taste. Like you said, it's drier than the Sangiovese, but it's got a little. I think it's got a little more depth to it. With all those nice, those four varietals converging and each contributing something different to it. It's really, and look at the color. It's got a beautiful color.
Deep as can be.
Yeah. Very, very.
Yeah, when you're using grapes that obviously have a very dark skin, like Merlot, Cab Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, you name it, they're going to give you a wine of great, like, purple coloration, very beautiful depth. Obviously, Merlot takes the lion's share as far as the blending percentages, because Merlot tends to deliver that suppleness and that approachability that you want, especially in a wine that you hope people drink, can age, but you want people to drink sooner. And then, as you mentioned, Cabernet Franc has become incredibly popular, especially in a world where conditions are getting warmer. The wines, generally speaking, tend to be warmer as far as the alcohol levels. Cabernet Franc is a great variety that still retains that beautiful element of freshness. As a matter of fact, one of the pioneers, obviously there's few, but one of the pioneers, Lodovico Antinori, the gentleman that started Ornellaia, and then eventually sold Ornellaia. He later, talking about 1980s now, but anyway, started a new estate where he was making wines predominantly based on Cab Franc, because, again, another visionary. He realized that there was something to Cabernet Franc. There wasn't just that green herbal note, but it's also the freshness that delivered into the wines. And today, more and more producers start blending higher percentages of Cab Franc, if not, where possible, where conditions allow, making 100% Cab Franc, which are really, I think, a thing of beauty. When well managed, obviously.
And this wine also has a great history. I mean, the first vintage was 1995, so it's had staying power. And you look through the years at you can say what you want about critics and their reviews, but it's been highly acclaimed throughout the years, which tells you, when a wine is that consistent and is consistently rated, well, the quality is there year in, year out. Even when they've had some bad vintages, they've done, they've produced a really decent wine, and this seems like a very quality wine that we're tasting today. It touches all the buttons there. So
he's always been a stickler for producing the highest possible quality, never cutting corners, reducing yield, sometimes not bottling, especially the top end wines when the nature of the vintage didn't allow for that, but especially in a wine like Le Cupole, because of there's a bit more exposure out there's a little bit more distribution, if you will. I believe that's your business card as a wine. That's the wine you get out there, people get a chance to taste, hopefully they love it, and it's always high quality in the bottle. And then eventually, yes, hopefully people connect also to the rest of the lineup at a much different price point as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned that this is aged in steel, or it's fermented in steel?
No, they do all their wines. They spend some time in oak.
Yeah.
Obviously, the upper tier wines, they will spend a bit longer time in oak, but also they will spend. We're talking about French oak barriques here.
Okay.
And only that, the percentage of new oak becomes more important in the three single vineyard Cab Franc, and especially Palazzi and Trinoro. As far as Le Cupole is concerned, for the most part, we're talking about used oak barrels for like a couple of years, and then those barrels are first used for the top wines and eventually make their way into this wine, because for a wine like Le Cupole, the idea is to create a house style of a wine. Yes, the percentage of grapes might vary vintage to vintage based on the harvest and what quality each of the four partners delivered. But ultimately, you still want to create a wine that is, somehow similar from one vintage to another, like it happens in many other cases,
But it expresses the grape, so they're very conservative with the oak. There's for aging purposes, it tastes very very natural to the grape. So it's very nice.
And plus, because a wine like this, no matter what, even if it's their I can say entry level wine, because really no entry level, but they still want to keep it at 2 years before it gets released in the market. As a matter of fact, I believe you have the 2020, right?
Yes, 2020. And
right.
And I just want to read some. So what would be the price point on this wine that we're talking about?
So Le Cupole would be a wine that generally in the market it's around $35, $36. Yeah. So it's after that, obviously the 3 Cab Francs become wines are well above $100, and then the Merlot can be close to 300, and lastly the Trinoro can be a wine around close to $400, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this has received some pretty good reviews from Robert Parker, Monica Lana, who writes for her. She gave it 94 points. James Suckling, 93 points. Antonio Galloni, which I subscribe to the Venus.com, 92 points. Jancis Robinson, she gave the 2020 a very good rating. The 2021, I guess, is out now too. That also got high ratings. So, but
right, every vintage these wines, like you mentioned earlier, and it's not just one review, if you will, one journalist or one magazine, but it's really across the board. All the ones you mentioned might as well be Suckling, Wine Spectator, Robert Parker, and Venus Media, and sometimes Decanter too. They all rate the wines very highly. And as a matter of fact, the pedigree, it's incredible here, not just obviously for Le Cupole, but even the top end where they received with the 2019 100 point as well by Parker, one of the wines. And this, so that goes to show, believe it or not, in points, it goes to show that there's very high quality in the bottles. And that, to me, that's the most important thing,
So when Mike gets in the kitchen, what should he pair this with? What can he make? What would you suggest for a nice food for this?
Crackers.
Well, I would suggest go get some wild boar wherever you can access that.
Wild boar, I love
Right
it.
in my backyard. I saw 3 go through yesterday.
Oh, perfect! This morning on a walk with the dog, I saw a deer. The dog wanted to chase the deer, but I didn't let her go. But that could have been also a good option. But obviously these are wines that have plenty of flesh, plenty of flavor, good round and intense mouthfeel. So they need a cuisine that has good flavors, which coming into the fall and winter months, definitely like a braises, stew, roasts. It could be beef. Obviously, it's a lot easier to find in your backyard than maybe wild boar, but also lamb that has a
Nice juicy ribs. Nice juicy ribs.
Yeah, that too. Just with the typical, like carrots, celery, onion, and some bay leaf and all the various herbs, stewed with red wine. The great flavors to go with this. Or even some, just to be more simplistic, even a dish like a meat sauce, like pappardelle with the meat sauce. Or a risotto with mushroom,
Risotto
if you like
mushrooms, see? Yeah, Mary Lee, the wine goddess can make that. So, Ciro, thank you very much. These are very 3 distinctive wines. And to our viewers, you should give them a chance, try them. You'll definitely start a conversation if you have guests over. But they're best, especially the 2 reds, the best served with food. We want to build a nice meal around this, and certainly I hope the Celtics have some of this prosecco in in their locker room tonight. You know,
sure they will.
You know, well, if they have, you know, they can drink.
If they know their Prosecco's,
that's right. That's right. We got to get Jason Tatum to have a glass of this, you know, and stuff. Now, Ciro, I got a surprise for you. Okay, so I'm at Vino Italiano last week. I had to pick up my recent order of Tignanello, which I have a little collection, and I see the last bottle on the shelf, the 𝐖𝐢𝐧𝐞 𝐁𝐿 from Calabria.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and I remember tasting this wine years ago with Joanne Ross in one of the wine classes, you know, and I said, "Oh my God!" I saw the bottle 𝐁𝐿, and it's the unique Gagliapo. Is it Gagliapo grape? Is that how you pronounce it?
Gagliapo, yeah.
Yeah, 100% from Calabria, and this is the Liber Pater. 𝐁𝐿. I mean, 𝐖𝐢𝐧𝐞 is a very well-known producer from southern Italy, Calabria, Gagliapo is it's one of the premier native grape from Calabria, isn't it?
Gagliapo, it's a very intricate grape because obviously it's the most important red grape of Calabria.
Yeah.
It is related to Sangiovese as well, which is unique. But other than that, these wines, 𝐁𝐿, although today, you know, basically pretty much no recognition, not many people know about, other than obviously great places like Vino Italiano for Italian wines. But they used to be the wines that they were awarded to the ancient, athletes of the Olympic Games during ancient Greece. And the wine used to be called Cremisa at the time, which translated into the town of 𝐁𝐿, where the wines come from in the eastern part of Calabria. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that 𝐁𝐿 is it's near the water, right? Isn't it right?
There's 𝐁𝐿 Marina, which is the part
𝐁𝐿 Marina,
water.
yes, yeah.
And then there's the little bit hillier part called 𝐁𝐿. But it's a town, and you can have 𝐁𝐿 both white, rosé, as well as red. But obviously the reds are the more well-known traditional wine between Ippolito, Librandi. There is another historical producer. Maybe the biggest one, and we, for example, represent also a 𝐁𝐿 producer called 𝐢𝐬𝐧𝐞. So the wines are out there. It's just not the most common, but they're great.
When I have this wine this weekend, okay, what can I expect to taste?
Those wines typically, I don't know what the vintage is there, just because sometimes, but their wines typically tend to have this.
This is the 2020.
2020, okay. Well, think about this. Calabria, it's a hot place. The grape variety does share some similarity with Sangiovese, where it's going to have a pretty sharp tannin, so they have a pretty bold, dry mouthfeel. Also hot, as far as the weather is concerned. Good acidity. They almost have this kind of red pepper, like hot pepper, red pepper note. That's why in Calabria they love everything hot. They got a lot of hot peppers. They got the famous nduja, the spreadable hot sausage that they use in many, not only to eat as is, but also in many food preparations. So get some nice dry, very well dry aged pecorino, and have at it.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. This cost $19. It was at Vino Italiano, and we're gonna try it. But I said, you know what? I'm gonna drink 𝐁𝐿's wine right there. So listen, we got about 4 or 5 minutes left. Give us some suggestions for the holidays. Anything besides the 3 wines we talked about today? What's trending at your place that people might be on the lookout for? Anything in the wine world for the holidays?
I think there are few varietals that have been, in general, wines anyway, that have been very, very popular. One is pecorino.
Yeah.
From Abruzzo mostly, where for the longest time was pretty much an unrecognized white grape and wines, but today has gained a huge popularity in the marketplace. And it's definitely something to look for because there's a lot of value. The wines generally tend to be fairly inexpensive, and you can just get a very delicious glass of wine, if you will. Another area where I think it's worth searching because you can find great value, great quality wine is Montefalco in Umbria. And you have not only the Sagrantino, which is the prime grape there, but also you have Rosso di Montalcino. There is a the blend of Sangiovese, Sagrantino, and at times other grapes. You get a taste of the dryness of Sagrantino, but still with the liveliness and highest acid tones of Sangiovese. And another, well, obviously, Sicily has been extremely popular, I have to say, in general. Beautiful place. So many people now, they're traveling there because of the many shows on various networks they've been watching. So people are discovering Sicily and its natural beauty, historical beauty, the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and finally discovering the wines, where Etna has been a huge draw to many people to start tasting Sicilian wines. But there is a lot more than that. As much as Etna is beautiful and the wines are amazing, you can find some true gems made with Catarratto, nearby part of the island, Passito di Pantelleria from obviously the island of Pantelleria. It's really an incredible place because you can be as diverse as possible, as many grapes as possible, and you can go from bone dry white wines all the way to, Passito style dessert wines and everything in between. Sparkling, rosé, Marsala, which is another obviously historical wine that was relegated to be a cooking wine, but in reality, it shouldn't be that, or not exclusively that. But yeah, Italy, it's like that. Every corner's got its own sets of unique grapes and wines where we could talk about it for months to come. But
Very good. So what do you have? Any questions for Ciro?
No questions. He was a great guest today. Thank you for coming on.
Ciro, thank you very much. Anything going on? You going to be doing any wine tastings this weekend at all that open to the public? I know you've been busy.
Jim, I actually have last week, as you know, I was Saturday up Liquor Junction in North Andover for their Italian wine grand tasting. Tonight, I'm actually in Woburn at Sogno. We're doing a wine dinner specifically with the wines of Innocenti, the Rosso di Montalcino there. We'll be showcasing the whole line of red wines they make. And then Thursday, for this week anyway, I will be at Via Cannuccia in Dorchester. It's a great spot. My buddy Stefano, he's from Rome and makes some tremendous, really tremendous food and desserts. He's super talented. And we'll be showcasing wines of the two islands, Sardinia and Sicily.
Oh, wow. That's Thursday?
Yeah. This coming Thursday. Yeah. And then it keeps on going. I'm not going to yell it out because my wife is going to get mad and she's here. She hears I got too many things on the calendar.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ciro, thank you very much. We'll have to have you on again because you've been such a great guest and we've learned a lot. And we love these wines. They're exquisite. So
thank you.
I want to thank you and have a great week. And Mike, any closing thoughts?
No. I'm glad he came on today. That was very informative and good wines. I like them both, which is unusual. I usually like one of it. They were both great.
And we'll have that Prosecco this weekend.
So both will have that this weekend.
Ciro, it's to you. Salute.
Grazie. Have a wonderful day. And thank you for having me, guys.
All right. Take care. We'll see you.
All right. Ciao.
Next week, we have another special guest coming on. It's going to be our election special. We want you to stay tuned. We're going to have Boston Herald columnist Peter Lucas on, and we're going to talk about what candidates will be drinking on election night. We're going to look at the national election and some regional elections. So Peter's going to be telling us who's going to drink the champagne come election night. So stay tuned. Mike and I will be here, and you'll learn something. And Peter Lucas is a great guy. You should read his column in the Boston Herald. Okay.
And you can always depend on him from a completely objective opinion.
All right. May the wine be with you.